It's 4:20 somewhere, and right now that somewhere is right here. So welcome to the Cannabist Show. I'm producer Vince. Welcome back, producer Eric, and here's your host, Ricardo Baca.
Hey, thanks, producer Vince. And props to everyone listening to the podcast, watching the show today. It's been a good week so far, and I've really been looking forward to today's show because we have some great guests and a lot to talk about. So hey, Vince, let's delve right in to the week in weed.
I am so feeling it, Ricardo. Where are we starting out this week?
We're going to start in the show me state, and that, of course, is Missouri or Misery, depending on how you pronounce it. But the big news out of Missouri this week has marijuana advocates all over the globe celebrating.
And pot activists and advocates don't have a lot to cheer about in Missouri usually.
True story. But this time it's good news for pretty much everyone involved. So 62-year-old Jeff Mizanskey was sent to prison in 1993 on marijuana charges. And since it was his third pot arrest in Missouri, it meant life in prison. After Mizanskey served 20 plus years in prison on those charges, Missouri lawmakers repealed the state's 3 strikes you're out law, and it opened a door for the state's governor, Jay Nixon, to commute Mizanskey's life sentence, something the governor did in May of this year.
It's unusual news coming out of the Midwest, which is known as fairly 420 unfriendly territory.
It is. But in May, when Governor Nixon commuted Mizanskey's sentence, he said, "My action provides Jeff Mizanskey with the opportunity to demonstrate that he deserves parole."
It does, and now Mizanskey's son Chris is saying that his dad will be home in 10 to 25 days. That's huge.
Under a month. It's an interesting case that illustrates one of the major failures of America's war on drugs, because even though the U.S. accounts for only 5% of Earth's population, it's home to 25% of the planet's prisoners.
And nonviolent drug charges are a huge part of why that number is so high.
Yeah, so it raises the question, is this going to turn around as more and more states legalize cannabis and other states lighten their penalties for drug charges?
I can't imagine it's not going to turn things around. I can't wait to see the Colorado prisoners who are in jail for marijuana bring this up as we have legalization here, but it'll be a couple of more years to see how legalization does impact those statistics.
Sure, absolutely, Vince. Now, in other marijuana news this week, a new Mother Jones report has unearthed some pretty crazy documents that show a number of American cities and counties and towns requesting military-grade armored vehicles to combat the evil and the terror that is
dun dun dun
marijuana grows.
Well, brother, you know how dangerous those plants can be.
Let's file this one under strange but true, Vince, because of course the militarization of local police forces have been an important story ever since the Ferguson, Missouri riots 1 year ago. But Mother Jones's story shows us why some of these small to medium-sized police departments are requesting these armored vehicles directly from the Pentagon.
Exactly, and here's one example from the report. The police department in Cass County, Minnesota, for those of you who've not heard of the population 28,000 county, requested an armored vehicle because of a, quote, significant increase of outdoor marijuana grows within the county, end quote.
And more than a quarter of the 465 requests that came in were for drug enforcement, according to Mother Jones. With these vehicles that we're talking about, Vince, they're built to withstand mine explosions. They're built for Afghanistan deserts and Pakistan mountain ranges. Is this kind of artillery really needed in Minnesota counties with less than 30,000 people living there?
Of course they are. Haven't you been to all the marijuana grows around Denver and around Colorado, protected by mines and heat-seeking missiles?
I haven't been to those, no.
Yeah, me neither, and I've been to a couple of grows out here. But, it's the militarization of the national police forces, and that's what we're seeing across the country. My favorite part in that story was when they pointed out that overkill has been part of the drug war since day one.
Since day one, and that's true. In many ways, this story points out what we were talking about earlier with the Missouri story. We've made so much progress in terms of how we view marijuana realistically in this country, and the pro-marijuana faction, they've seen progress in terms of public opinion. we've seen these public opinion polls change, and suddenly 54 to 56% of the country agrees with legal marijuana. At the same time, we even see some of these very 420 unfriendly states like Missouri, like Louisiana, lighten up their laws surrounding the prohibition of this substance that is still illegal there, but we're still not where we need to be as far as cannabis is concerned, and I think this illustrates that.
No, we're not at all, but let's back up and get on the police's side for a second, just for a change of pace.
Sure.
I mean, it's still illegal. It is, even in states where they're decriminalizing and they're loosening the regulations, and it's still illegal, and we have a police force to fight illegal things. So shouldn't they have the tools to fight those illegal things the way they see necessary? Yes and no. I mean, they might be going a little overboard, but who doesn't go a little overboard when somebody else is footing the bill?
You know, I just have a hard time with it. We're talking about tanks in tiny rural counties with very minuscule drug problems, but I get what you're saying, Vince. I do get what you're saying. It's time to move on to our first guest this week, who is excitingly our newest staff member here at the Cannabist. He's been working in the marijuana space for a while, but now you can start reading his pot criticism on our site every week. That's thecannabist.co. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to one of our new pot critics, Sohum Shah. Sohum, how's it going? Hey, dude, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What do you think so far?
Pretty cool so far. It's a nice building, nice location.
So you're one of our new pot critics. We're excited to introduce our readers to you, and we have your first review up on the site. Tell us a little bit about yourself, though, because how did you find yourself here? What's your relationship with marijuana been over the years?
Well, I guess it goes back to the first time I smoked, which was on a cruise ship in Jamaica on Christmas Day, and I was like 14 years old. A lot of the older kids on the ship kind of, I guess, peer pressured me into it.
And they found some on land and brought it back onto the boat? Okay.
So it was fun. We smoked out of like a little wood pipe at the very front of the ship. And, you know, it was off and on there through high school and college. And, you know, when I graduated, I knew I wanted to come back and work in the industry, and had been around the plant for a while. So moved back home to Denver and just started out there.
And you work in the industry now, right? You co-founded a company?
Yep, it's called the Cannabis Commodities Exchange. It's a wholesale platform for state licensed businesses to buy and sell flower, trim, concentrates, edibles, basically any cannabis product.
Oh, nice.
Thanks.
Well, your first review is up on the Cannabist right now. It's Durbin Poison, and in an odd coincidence, you purchased this sample at a shop owned by our next guest, and we will get to that, but you really liked this cut of Durbin that you bought at Good Chemistry, and I want to know what made it so affable, so likable to your sensibilities.
Absolutely. Well, one of the biggest things I look for in most strains, but especially at Durbin, is that really unique, pungent odor that it has, almost like pine sol, piney, citrusy smell that it has. It's very unique, and some cuts of it just don't pop out at you with the smell. So to me, that's one of the biggest things I look for, especially in that Durbin, which is one of my favorite strains. And then just the way that it was trimmed, it was cured properly, it had the right moisture. You know, there was a lot of other aspects to it, but overall it was a really great smoke.
It's always, I love hearing people who know talk about the cure. Tell us about what makes a good cure to you. I've seen people kind of feel the bud and feel that bounce. But what is it for you?
It's a little bit of that bounce, how much it pushes back when you squeeze it. It's really, I think it's something that's starting to become more prevalent, and like you said, the guys at Good Chemistry do it really well, but taking the time to actually cure the flower for the necessary amount of time, and you know, that varies depending on what the environment is and what the exact strain is, but I think a lot of the times in shops you see them rushing to get product to the shelf and not quite drying or curing the product enough.
I see. Okay, interesting. So this isn't the first time you've reviewed weed, obviously. You've been doing this for a while, but if you can walk us through that process for you, you know, from the shopping to the smoking to the writing and anything else in between. I mean, walk us through, you know, and maybe the Durbin's a good place to start.
Yeah, sure. So Usually, especially if I go into a shop where I don't know anyone there, I've never been there before, I like to play it a little dumb and see how informative the bud tenders or the managers are and how much they really know about their product and some of the genetics behind it. And then beyond that,
ask some questions
exactly
that you probably already know the answer to.
Exactly, and or maybe ask them about some of the genetics behind their strains and see if it matches up with what's consistent around the industry or around the state. And then from there, it's just doing more of an actual inspection of all the different flower they have on the shelf. An eye test, a smell test, and some places that allow it, if you can use like tongs or something to actually squeeze the flower a little bit and try and get an idea of that cure, that moisture content.
Sure. Okay. And then you bring it home, and then you're smoking it. Are you taking notes? Are you writing as you're smoking it?
Yeah, I usually try and take some notes before. First, observe the nug, do a more close inspection of it now that you can actually touch the product and break it apart. Put a little bit into a grinder, see how much keef comes out of it. Look at it just with a little bit more light, and then I usually will try and pinch off a very small amount. Something that you could put into a chillum or 1 or 2 hits into a spoon, really just to get a lot of the flavor off those first few hits, and then. From there, really evaluating the effects, first 15 minutes, first 30 minutes, and, and then beyond that.
And you're taking notes all the while?
Generally, I sometimes after the onset, I first start to forget taking notes, but usually I'll go back within the next day or two and kind of fill in the blanks and then try and get as much of it on paper as quickly as possible while it's still fresh in my mind.
Sure. And then are you writing while you're still stoned, or are you waiting until that stone wears off?
I guess it really depends on the strain. Something like Durbin, it was really easy to stay focused on writing what I needed to do because that's the nature of the strain. It really helps you focus and focuses your mind. So, other different strains, other cuts might not have the same effect. And another one that I did when I was up in Seattle, that was a little bit more indica heavy, so that one required a little bit more of remembering after and going back and taking notes.
Oh, nice. Interesting. It's always so fun to hear about the process, especially because it's kind of a new field, especially as it enters legitimacy. I think we have some of the best pot critics in the country working on our staff, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to that, man. So
thank you, man. I
welcome
appreciate
on
it.
board, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm also very excited about our next guest, who is a major player in the legal marijuana industry here and elsewhere. He has a history in California pot, a couple stores open in Colorado, and irons in the fire elsewhere. It's my pleasure to welcome Good Chemistry owner Matthew Huron to the Cannabist Show. Matt, how's it going?
Hi, how are you?
Welcome.
Welcome, and thank you for the fabulous review.
I know. I think you're going to like it when you read it. Matt, as you know, many people in the industry have super compelling stories as far as how they ended up here. Some people are here, for the money, and other people have a connection to this industry. But you and I have met before and talked, and you have one of the most moving stories that I've ever heard in terms of marijuana entrepreneurs. So do you mind sharing some of that story with us?
Yeah, sure. I got involved in cannabis in 2000, and really organically with my father and his partner, who both had HIV. And they found therapeutic benefits through cannabis, and amongst their friends as well. Many of their friends had HIV. And in 2000, my dad and I decided we should start cultivating and distributing medical marijuana throughout the city to a variety of assisted living facilities and hospice care facilities.
And this is in San Francisco,
And this
correct,
is in San Francisco.
Okay, sure.
And it was really small, and it started to grow. I ran that co-op for about 10 years, and unfortunately, in 2008, my father's partner passed away, and shortly after, in 2009, my father passed away. And, I was left with this, pretty large co-op at that time, and, California is very unregulated, as we know, still is to this day.
Sure.
And, I had a decision to make, and I almost got out of the business because, I was looking over my shoulder all the time and not able to really discuss what I do with people. And fortunately, I had a friend here in Colorado, and he invited me out, and I noticed that the industry here was beginning to thrive, and I decided to look into doing a business here, and really at the same time in 2010, that's when the first state legislation was being passed around regulating medical marijuana. That was very
good timing.
yeah, it was very good timing, and I had 10 years of cultivation experience under my belt, so I had a bit of a competitive advantage, I think, to many people getting involved at that time, not having really any experience. And again, the regulations is really what attracted me. And so in 2010, I decided to shut the co-op down in San Francisco and move the business here, and I started Good Chemistry in June of 2010.
And have you regretted staying in the business in that time, or are you glad that you're still here working in this? There's been so much change in that time that you've been in Colorado even.
It's been a hell of a ride. I mean, I am extremely excited to be in the business and be able to participate in a meaningful way and help out with the rules. I'm active on some advisory boards with the Department of Revenue, and really be involved on that side of it to really create, again, meaningful regulations that are an example for the rest of the country. And to see where it is today is just, I say this a lot. I feel like, this is Cannabis Planet Colorado, and there is no place, and even in other states that have passed laws and are kind of are navigating and grappling with the rules and regs, this is unique. And I'm extremely excited to be part of it here in Colorado.
And I do want to ask you about some of that uniqueness, because not only do you have this history in California and Colorado, but now new ventures elsewhere. And to say that you've had an interesting experience with your cannabis licenses in Massachusetts is probably a bit of an understatement. So can you walk us through those experiences in Mass and talk a little bit about how that system differs from what we have here in Colorado?
Yeah, Massachusetts is medical. They passed their medical law in November of 2012. We, because of our experience, we saw that as an opportunity. We liked the law, and we saw that as an opportunity for us to get engaged early. We met with the Department of Public Health there, which is the regulatory body, and really helped them think about, how to regulate and manage, medical marijuana industry. I mean, the law passed, and they're sitting there, what do we do? What do we do with the waste? What do we do? And, how do we track it, security, et cetera? So we went in and we had some great meetings with the department, and, the process continued, and it became a very competitive process. Unlike here, where, if you meet certain requirements and you're in the right zone in your city and municipality, et cetera, pass your background checks, you can open a business. There, they went through a very competitive scoring process, and unfortunately became highly political, and to this day there's actually, I shouldn't say that, one dispensary has finally opened practically 3 years after they passed the law, and so we are still in the process there. I was actually just there yesterday.
Wow, okay.
And again, it's culturally it's very different. Many of the people there, even though it passed 62%, when it comes back down to being cited in a certain neighborhood or certain areas, a lot of backlash. And so there's a lot of education out there and a lot of work that needs to be done to get invited into a community and have a community feel comfortable with a medical marijuana business there. And
so how many shops will you have eventually? And where are you at in those? Might you be opening by the end of the year,
well,
next year?
So hopefully, there's a new administration, Governor Baca out there, and he's been very, very proactive, and he's starting to streamline the process, which is great. So we're hopeful that not this year, but probably in about 12 months, we will be able to open our doors.
For one shop, multiple shops?
For one shop right now, but we have applied for 3.
Okay.
We're very excited about one.
We're going to have to follow up. And wasn't it the Massachusetts, the new governor there, that he kind of had to kick things into shape because it was crawling along? Do I remember reading that in the last 6 months?
The last administration, Governor Patrick Deval, or Deval Patrick, sorry, he was worried about his legacy. There was a lot of stuff got in the newspaper about some of our competitors, and some of them had felonies or this or that, and so he just shut the whole thing down.
Sure.
He wanted to go out. He didn't want to have any stains on his record, if you will, even though there was quite a few stains. And the new governor said, "Look, the voters have passed this. We need to get this going," and he has. So.
Well, let's move the conversation back local because we have
Yes.
plenty of concerns here,
Yes.
lots of controversial discussions happening to this date. But one of those things is pesticides. The pesticides being used on legal cannabis
Yes.
that's been grown in this state for 14, 15 years. Over the last 4 or 5 months, this has been in the news a lot lately, as you know, and some growers in Denver County were caught using potentially dangerous pesticides that they shouldn't have been using, that they weren't okayed by the state's agriculture department. So,
Right.
in your opinion, especially since you have a couple shops here and multiple cultivations, how serious is this conversation about pot pesticides?
Well, I think it's a very serious conversation. I mean, I think pesticides, whether it's marijuana or tomatoes or any other crop, is a serious conversation. I mean, nobody wants to ingest harmful pesticides. So I do think it's something that we need to take very seriously. Unfortunately, like many of the other conversations we're having in this industry, this is still federally illegal, similar to banking and some of our tax problems we have. Until it's descheduled, we can't really get the federal agencies to really start testing and understanding whether, in this case, whether which pesticides are not harmful or are harmful. Can you use some in a certain stage of life, use some in other stages of life, et cetera. And that's the huge hurdle for us right now, is that
Sure.
we're kind of just living in this vacuum, if you will, of not being able to really understand the issue.
And it's true, the EPA absolutely regulates all pesticides with active ingredients, and that's a big concern here. How do you think Colorado's handled this pesticide issue, whether it's the city of Denver putting these plants on hold, or the state agriculture department kind of working toward eventually coming up with a list of pesticides that are not prohibited, but at the same time still not really encouraged for use on cannabis?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're doing their best ultimately. I mean, clearly, like many other areas, this is new. There's still a lot of fear around, cannabis in general and the effects of cannabis, and now pesticides being involved with that.
Sure.
And so there may have been some overreaction in some cases. But I think it's balancing out now, and I think many of the folks that are involved intimately in the conversation are starting to understand that, we need to really figure out, how we're gonna test these pesticides with cannabis to find out if they're harmful or not.
Okay, sure. Sohum, Scott, scoot over a bit. Scoot over a scotch. We are going to all talk a little bit about dispensary design.
Okay.
Matt, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
You just opened your second Good Chemistry in
Yes.
Aurora, which is a
Yes.
suburb of Denver, and Sohum and I have both been there independently, but we both remarked, as have a lot of other people who have stopped by there, that it's just kind of next generation, next level dispensary design. And I was in your Denver shop last night, and I noticed that you're starting to carry over some of those design elements to that shop. So from your perspective, how important is good design when it comes to planning out a marijuana shop?
Well, from my perspective, I think it's very important. I think we're coming from, a subculture more into a mainstream. I think there's many people out there that are interested in cannabis, maybe don't understand, the language of cannabis, can be intimidated. Some of the shops, there's kind of these strict security vestibules you have to walk through, and it's you walk in and the language on the wall, the way things are described, hybrid, sativa, THC, CBD, that's foreign to people.
Sure.
And so I think the design itself I think it's very important. I think myself and some of my competitors are really starting to understand that, we want to create environments that are relatable to more people than the subculture. And that doesn't mean we're ignoring the subculture, but that we're expanding from there.
And it's not just about aesthetics, it's also about education, as you guys have kind of taken on yourselves at the news shop.
Right. And we've gone through, we have a medical advisor that works with us, and we've done a series of surveys and focus groups on the different sub-effects of cannabis, whether that's, sedative or relaxation, or as you mentioned with the Durbin, focus or more stimulating cannabis, and really trying to categorize cannabis in, again, a very relatable fashion. So somebody who, maybe smoked a joint in college or smokes marijuana at dinner parties, but doesn't really understand what they're doing. They know they like it. They know it helped them fall asleep at night. You know, they can come into the shop and they can see, you know, a sleep category, and they can relate to that and say, okay, that makes sense, or relaxation or relief or stimulation.
And I noticed those categories at your Aurora shop. You know, I primarily tend toward sativas, toward creative, energetic, those kinds of strains and edibles. And certainly it's been fascinating to see not only shops, but also manufacturers of edible products kind of go that direction.
Right.
Instead of saying this is a hybrid, saying this is good for focus and this is good for sleep. And so, I mean, when you and I first started talking about you in this job, you sent me a piece that you'd written about the opening of the Aurora store, and you were clearly impressed. But why is design important to your shopping experience, you know, in this newly legal space?
It's something that I noticed when I was a bud tender before at a medical store that so many stores just took over kind of whatever space was available at the time or whatever was, you know, economical for their business model, and didn't really have a lot of money or time or effort to put into redesigning the shop or rebuilding it out. And as such, we lost out on a lot of really standard retail practices that center around what I think Good Chem's Aurora store really nailed, and that's the consumer education part of it. You're absolutely right that a lot of people don't necessarily know what the difference between an indica and a sativa is, or what a different strain is, or really care about the genetics for that matter. They care about what's the end effect going to be for them. And I guess that's part of what interests me about this job too, is being able to look at cannabis from a wholesale perspective and then dial that down to what does that really mean for the end consumer, though, because there's such a big gap in the way that those decisions are made right now.
I think that's important, and I think in a way your guys' jobs are somewhat similar. You're holding people's hands as they walk through your retail facility, and you're holding people's hands as they're maybe thinking about going out and making a purchase and saying, that Durbin Poison sounds like it'll put me on the ground, and maybe I haven't graduated to that level yet, but in a way I think it's somewhat similar what you guys do. And Matt, it is your favorite time of the program, dude. It is time for the pot quiz.
Okay.
Something that you've been studying for clearly
yes.
on your flight home
Yes.
last night. The way we play, we're going to start with you, Matt, then we'll bounce back and forth 4 questions. If Matt doesn't get the right answer, you can steal the point, and vice versa. So, pretty straightforward. You get 1 guess, and this is this week's pot quiz. So, Matt, a congressman from what legal state recently wrote a letter to the U.S. Attorney General saying that marijuana, quote, should not be categorized as a Schedule I drug? What state did that congressman hail from? Legal state.
Right. Oregon.
There you go. There you go. Good guess. Good. What was that? Was that a guess or did you know?
I kind of knew.
Okay, good.
I kind of knew.
Excellent, great.
It was like the SATs where you start, you know, taking stuff off. You know, like, wait, I can make this a 50-50 guess.
Process of elimination. All right, that's points. Good work. Good work.
Right.
So, here we go with you. Your first question. Was Shakespeare a stoner? According to a recent report, researchers analyzed the clay pipes found in his garden that were dated to the time when he was alive, and they found a number of ancient marijuana compounds on the pipes. In what town did Shakespeare live in at that time? What was his hometown? Where is this garden located?
That's a tough one.
Oh man, I don't even want to guess because I have no idea.
It's in England. One hint.
Oh man.
No guesses?
Manchester? I have no idea.
It's a good guess. It's wrong, but it's a good guess still. All right, moving on. Matt, you got the steal?
I'm gonna go with London.
Oh, that's a good guess too. That's also wrong. This is one of those weird towns that's hyphenated. Stratford-upon-Avon.
Oh yes, heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard about it too. A friend of mine lives in California in a town called Cardiff by the Sea, and it's all hyphenated. It's very English.
Yes.
Matt, next question is yours.
Okay.
The protestival known as Hempfest will take over what major North American city this weekend?
North American city? You're not gonna
Major
give me any
North American
more
city.
direction than that?
I don't think so. No, major
It's not
North
in
American
England, we'll
city.
say that much.
You might assume if they have a hemp fest that they're in some stage of legalization,
Yeah.
but
Ohio.
oh, city.
Oh, sorry, city. Okay, well, I said Ohio, so,
So you'll go with Columbus or
got
Cincinnati.
so yeah.
It is not in
Okay,
Ohio.
all right.
Sohum for the steal.
Seattle.
There you go, Seattle.
Oh,
Hempfest, yeah, it's been going on for years. I've never been, but they call it a protestival, which I thought was kind of creative. And we have a writer going out there this weekend to
They're having
to
a
cover
business
for
side
us.
of it too, I think, this year for the first time, like a business expo attached to it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we published a story on the Cannabist today that kind of said that for the first time their public smoking garden isn't happening because of new Washington laws that were just passed in the last few months. So I know there's a lot of folks going to Hempfest who are bummed about that. All right, points for Sohum. And Sohum, here is the next question for you and the last question of the day. What specific word is the Colorado government considering banning on edible pot products?
Candy.
There you go. Nice. Good work, gentlemen. Good work. It's all good. Next time you'll study up better, Matt, and next time it'll be more of a game. We got this going on.
All right.
I want to say thanks to our guests, Sohum and Matt, and thanks to you all for watching and listening. I'm Ricardo Baca with The Cannabist. Over here, that's producer Vince, Dane, Eric, Katie, Matt. Matt, your last weekend. Props and good luck on your next stop. Have a great day, everyone, and we will see you next week. All right.
All right.
Ain't afraid to get in, I be going for the jackpot with aces in my hand, I'm raw.